Hello, and welcome to the Standardized Recipes and Production Records webinar. My name is Pamela Heinrichs. I am the Food Nutrition Specialist for the Southeast region, and I will be presenting the webinar today. Let's get started. Our objectives today are including identifying the key requirements of standardized recipes and production records, to develop or revise standardized recipes to include essential information, determine what contributes to the meal pattern, identify important and required aspects and benefits of a production record, and improve food safety by strengthening temperature records by documenting on a production record. Why do we need to use standardized recipes? No two people cook the same. When I cook for myself, I like to add and subtract ingredients, measure with a pinch and a handful, add a little extra here or there. And so one year for Christmas, I gave each of my grown children a cookbook I had put together of all the recipes I used while they were growing up. And it never fails. I get phone call here and there going, "Okay, Mom, it didn't come out like yours. What's going on?" Oops. That's because I didn't write down everything I did to change. In school food service, we are serving a lot of children, and it's important for them to get the proper nutrition from their food. In order to meet the crediting requirements for the meal, we need a consistent way to be sure they are getting the same amount of proper nutrients every time we serve that meal. I really like this quote. It says, "Hope for the best, brace yourself for the worst, and no matter what you're faced with, make a plan to keep going." And that's exactly what our standardized recipe does, is makes a plan to keep going, no matter who has to make it. The United States Department of Agriculture defines a standardized recipe as one that has been tried, adapted, and retried several times for use by a given food service operation and has been found to produce the same good results and yield every time when the exact procedures are used with the same type of equipment and the same quantity and quality of ingredients. The benefits of a standardized recipe include consistent food quality, predictable yield, customer satisfaction, consistent nutrient content, food control costs, efficient purchasing procedures, inventory control, labor cost control, reduced record keeping, and anyone trained in your kitchen can cook a menu item based on the standardized recipes. A standardized recipe must be developed for all menu items having more than one ingredient, including any preparation instructions. Examples include purchased burritos, seasoned vegetables, baked seasoned chicken, even a cold-cut sandwich. Now, the components of a standardized recipe include the recipe name or title, recipe category or number, ingredients by form, which this is really important. Keep in mind, canned, frozen, fresh, all react differently, taste differently. So you want to make sure that you specify which form the food is coming in, and if it's diced, sliced, whatever that might be, you want to make sure that that is also listed. Weight and volume for each ingredient, preparation instructions and directions, cooking temperatures and times, if appropriate, and serving size, recipe yield, equipment and utensils to be used, food safety guidelines, or the HACCP plan, and the contribution. This is an example of a standardized recipe blank form. This is available on the DESE website under the meal pattern. This is also have places so that you can put multiple grade groups on the same recipe if you like. On the back side is also a standardized recipe for commercially prepared products so that you can put down extra information as needed. The use of standardized recipes is also an easy way to keep track of special dietary needs and/or accommodations of the children served. Following a standardized recipe ensures that people on varying diets are receiving the correct type and amount of food to meet their documented dietary needs and restrictions. For children with food allergies, serving food prepared from a standardized recipe offers assurance to the child and to the parents that an additional ingredient that may contain a major food allergen has not been added to the final product. If a cook strays from the standardized recipe by incorporating additional ingredients, the product quality and portion sizes change, as well as the cost increases and the potential of unknowingly serving an allergic child an allergen increases. And this is a risk that no one wants to knowingly take. So our fact check here is, what is a standard recipe? Is it A, a recipe developed by USDA, B, any published quantity recipe, C, a recipe that is tried and adapted to your operation, or D, all of the above? And the answer is C. A standardized recipe is a recipe that is tried and adapted to your school. A very useful tool when working with standardized recipes is the food buying guide. The food buying guide gives you lots of information on common can sizes, utensil sizes and capacity, purchasing guidelines, updated fruit and vegetable section, an updated meat alternative section, updated milk section, and an updated green section. The Food Buyer's Guide will help you better forecast and meet the minimum components. This is a screenshot of the Food Buying Guide calculator. I've used this several times and really like this application. It is very user-friendly and easy to navigate. They also have a mobile app. And this app is very handy for schools that don't have a computer in their food service area, but you still need to check something quickly or need to verify that something is correct. You can look it up on a mobile device as well. So how do we go about standardizing our favorite recipes? Putting it all together, you're creating a recipe book. A recipe book is a blueprint for routine reference, containing one page for each recipe and every food item used and every menu item made, including condiments, milk, jellies, crackers, etc. It's a guide to what can be used in creating menus. And it's a good idea to have these laminated or put them in the drop sleeves, whatever helps keep them clean and sanitary for your kitchen. The different areas would be meat alternate, grains and breads, vegetables, fruits, condiments, and milk. Organization is key for menu planning and preparing for a review. So make sure you have a system in place to categorize your recipes so you can easily retrieve them when needed. There are two handouts available discussing steps to standardize recipes. This is the first one, and it's the more detailed one that we'll be going through here in a minute. Here is the bottom of that first one as well that has an example we'll be going through. And then here is the other side, which has some, it's a more generalized standardized steps, but it has a couple of very good points that I'd like to point out. On number 4, it says determine if portion size will vary by grade groups and do necessary computations to determine the number of portions in the recipe for the different portion sizes. So keep in mind, grade does matter. Also, recipe variations, alternative ingredients, optional ingredients which will not alter the yield, meal pattern crediting, and/or nutrient content. If changes will alter the yield, crediting, and nutrient content, or if different procedures or equipment are used, test and re-standardize the recipe. Now remember, if you're still adding, say, cayenne pepper to a recipe and it doesn't alter the yield, it's still altering the recipe and it would be a good idea to have this on a separate recipe, just so that we are being consistent and not offering something that someone might be allergic to. This is just one example of a common recipe conversion, and it's a good idea to always have these around and keep them handy, because if you're needing to refigure something quickly, it's easy to make mistakes, and we want to make sure that we are preparing everything according to the directions. So try to keep these around handy in your kitchen. And my little funny for you for today. So let's take a close look at a recipe and the steps of standardizing it. And think, while you're doing that, think about if you were to make these for your school. If you have 30 kids or 300 kids, wouldn't that be fun to cut out 300 kitty cats and have those ready on the menu? Okay, here is our standardized recipe. We're going to take a look at this a little bit closer in different sections. Okay, for step 1, we're going to review the recipe carefully, checking for the following: making sure that all the ingredients are listed, that the amounts of the ingredients are correct and clearly stated in weight, pounds or ounces, or volume, gallons, quarts, and cups. If you have increased a recipe, don't leave it in the original measurements. For example, if you took a favorite apple crisp recipe and went from 6 servings to 50 servings, you're not going to, the original, say, called for 4 tablespoons of flour, so you don't want to leave that as 49 tablespoons of flour. You want to convert that, so you take in consideration 1 cup equals 16 tablespoons. So the new recipe would be 3 cups plus 1 tablespoon. Also, don't just list 1 bag of flour, 1 container of nuts, or whatever you're adding to your recipe, because if you should change brands or distributors, the size of your bag of flour or whatever item it is could change. Ingredients are listed in the order used. Makes the cook much more efficient and less likely to miss an ingredient. Directions are detailed, complete, accurate, and in order that they are to be completed. Time and temperature for cooking and specific utensils used for the service are clearly listed. Step 2, you're going to prepare the recipe. Keep in mind, not all recipes can be doubled to come out with the same quality results. This is why you may have to adjust it and try it again. Okay, for step 3, we're looking at the weights in pounds and ounces, or measure in gallons or quarts, or the number count of each item. The amount of product to be placed in each serving pan is noted on the recipe. Step 4, determine the recipe yield. Measure the total yield. This could be a count, or volumes in gallons or quarts, or weight in pounds or ounces. Record this on the recipe. An example, the yield is 30 pounds of chicken and noodles in weight, or by count as 125 sandwiches. Determine your serving size using the same unit of measure as the total yield, count, volume, or weight. For example, if the total yield is given in weight, 15 pounds of macaroni and cheese, then the serving size should be recorded in weight as well, 4-ounce serving of macaroni and cheese. Record the serving size on the recipe. Determine serving utensils. Example, if the serving size is 1/2 cup, a number 8 scoop or 4 fluid ounce ladle may be appropriate. Record the serving utensil on the recipe. Again, we want to have consistent serving sizes. Determine the total number of servings the recipe makes. Calculate the total number of servings using one of the following equations and record the total number of servings on the recipe. Here's our example from earlier. And we're looking again at measuring the total yield. For example, if you have 15 gallons plus 2.5 quarts, then you're going to determine the number of servings in the recipe, assuming the serving size is 1/2 cup. And you'll convert your 15 gallons and 2.5 quarts to cups. And so we've ended up with a total of 250 cups. If we divide that by the 1/2 cup count, we get a total of 500 total servings. If the serving size is in weight or volume, divide the total yield by the serving size. For example, 1 gallon total yield divided by 1/2 cup serving equals 32 servings total. But if the serving size is a count, multiply the number of servings per pan by the number of pans. So if we have 12 servings per pan for 3 pans, we have a total of 36 servings. Step 5, we're going to evaluate the recipe for quality, yield, serving size, flavor, color, texture, and adjust as needed. For step 6, you're going to calculate the meal pattern contribution. And then step 7, retest the recipe. For step 8, we're going to record the cooking time and record internal temperatures on the recipe. And then for step 9, add additional notes as desired. For example, a better product was achieved by using cold water instead of hot water. Or do not overmix the mixture or it will not rise while baking. Or mix till dry ingredients are moist. The mixture may still be lumpy. This one, again, add some cayenne pepper to the recipe for a kick, but you want to list the exact amount. And I would suggest that be a separate recipe, just because you have it with and without. And then step 10, this is on this checklist, which I borrowed from someone else, and it is in the references later, the nutrient analysis of the recipe. There are a couple of useful tools located on the DESE website under the meal pattern. The standardized recipe converter is a tool that you can use if you wish to calculate the meat alternate, the grain, the vegetable contribution, proportion in a recipe. The creditable grain in a recipe converter helps you determine the grams of whole grains per serving. And then the SP30 2012 converter is a tool that helps you convert grains into whole grain rich equivalency, like on Exhibit A. Our trivia question, created as part of the Child Nutrition Reauthorization, what institute located at the University of Mississippi is dedicated to school nutrition research? And the answer is the Institute of Child Nutrition. This is also a very helpful resource when you're needing some online trainings to be able to complete. They have a lot of wonderful resources on this website, so please check it out. Now we're going to switch over to production records. Production records are required for your administrative review. The menu production record is a valuable tool in the menu planning process. It serves the dual purpose of demonstrating compliance with the program requirements and communicating the menu to the staff. Here is an example of a production record. On the DESE website, under Meal Pattern, this template is located, and it's actually a self-fillable sheet, and it has tabs for breakfast, lunch, and a daily food bar. And this is very helpful for smaller schools that do not have software to fill this out for them. You can fill these out and save them before you actually use them, and that way you can reprint them as needed for that particular meal. This is an after-school snack program production record for anyone participating in that program. This one is found under USDA program regulations, under school meals, and then under after-school snack program. The production record helps you make sure that you are meeting your daily requirements by tracking what is served for breakfast, lunch, salad bar, and snack. Production records also provide staff direction and communication, forecasting for the week, support monthly claims, and the ability to track items for nutrient analysis if necessary. It's also extremely valuable for tracking student acceptance of a product or recipe. These records need to be kept for 3 years plus the current year. Now, if you're CEP, you will need to keep them longer than that. The required content of a production record: the date, the site, which is especially important if you have several different sites and you store these together by month, food components, recipes or product used, planned number of servings for students and adults, serving size, total amount of food prepared, actual number of reimbursable meals, number of adult meals and a la carte, and leftovers and substitutions. Temperatures may also be included on this sheet or may be recorded on a regular temperature log. Only required to be recorded in one place, but you do need to be consistent in where you record those. Optional, but highly recommended, the meal pattern contribution for each menu item indicates if a food item credits as one of the 5 required lunch components: meat, meat alternative, grain, fruit, vegetable, or milk. Some production record templates also include vegetable subgroups. This is especially important if the menus are being planned by someone else. The biggest issues I have seen in reviews I have gone on so far this past year have been either a substitution or a menu item dropped or changed without looking closely at the menu, causing a component to not be offered on the weekly totals, or short on leafy greens or red-orange vegetables. If the rolls didn't come in on the truck yesterday, be sure there is something on the menu for the grain, or you need to find a replacement, because missing that grain completely from the menu could get costly in physical action because you are not meeting the nutritional needs of your children. So who is responsible for completing the production record? The menu planner, production staff, meal servers? It can be one or it can be all. This depends on the easiest way to divide the duties in your kitchen. Now, when should the production records be completed? Well, the majority of the information is put onto the production record ahead of time. But the day of the service, then the remainder of that information is completed on the production record. Our next trivia question: why or for whom was HACCP created? And the answer is NASA. Now we're going to look more closely at a production record. You can look at the handout that you have, or each thing will be shown on the screen following the one we discuss. The date, of course, is important for the date the menu is served. School, especially if you have several buildings. Offer versus serve. You want to check that, yes or no. Grades, record the grades that are being served. You might have more than one grade on that production record. Per student, daily and weekly totals. This is especially useful to keep track of the red, orange, dark green, starchy, etc., to be sure you're meeting the minimum of each week. And then the meal counts. Record the total number of both planned and actual reimbursable student meals by grade group and adult meals. So here we are. Right here again is where you're going to mark which school, if you're offer versus serve, grades. Here is that handy box to help you track weekly. You carry it over to the next day each time so that you can keep track of your vegetables and vegetable subgroups or fruits, grains, so that you can be sure as you're going along the week that you're meeting all the requirements needing to be met. And then over here is where your meal counts will go. The component contributions column. Menu planners indicate how menu items credit to the meal pattern. Meat and meat alternate and grains are credited as ounce equivalents. So be sure that you write that down in an ounce equivalent, and keep in mind the minimum creditable amount is 0.25 ounce equivalent. Now an example is a 3-ounce fish patty credits as 2-ounce equivalent of meat. Fruit and vegetables are credited by volume, and the minimum crediting amount for fruits and vegetables is 1/8 cup. Vegetable subgroups are included as well. So here we have the component and contribution section here, and we have a 2-ounce hot dog and 2 ounces of chicken nuggets, and they're listed under their section, so you don't have to actually put meat alternate here. Most whole fruits contain 1/2 cup of creditable fruit, such as whole pears, 150 count, bananas, oranges. If you're unsure about the size of apple you have, how that it should credit for a 1/2 cup, you can always check your food buyer's guide. They have all of that listed in there for easy reference. The one thing to keep in mind, those cuties do not count as a 1/2 cup of fruit. You have to either offer 2 of those or offer another fruit along with it. The other thing to watch is weight versus volume on leafy greens. You've got 8 ounces of butter lettuce, but when we look at leafy greens on our menu, we look at whether we have a 1/2 cup or a full cup, keeping in mind that a 1/2 cup of lettuce only credits as a 1/4 cup of leafy greens. So if you need to get a 1/2 cup of vegetable for that day, you're going to need to serve 1 full cup of leafy green vegetables. The menu. List all food items used in the menu. Food items for food-based menu planning are, again, meat alternate, vegetables, fruit, grains and breads, and milk. Remember to include brand names and ID numbers of purchased and prepared food items. Condiments and other foods served with the meal should also be included. I can't stress enough to keep your brand names listed. This is where I also want to remind you that your menu, your production record, and your menu documentation all need to match. Different brands can credit differently, so you want to make sure that if you're using brand A on your production record, that's what brand A is, what your documentation states, as well as your recipe. Again, here's where those items go, and you got a place here for those condiments because they still have to be included in the calorie count for that day's meal. Serving temperatures. These can be recorded on your production record or on another temp form, whichever is easiest for your kitchen. Again, be consistent. You want to record the temperatures of the food at the end of the cooking period prior to placing it on the serving line, and then continue cooking if needed until it reaches the required internal temperature, and then you document the final temp. And this can be documented on the production record, as we see right here, or you can have a temperature log where you put all of your temperatures, whatever works best to be sure that you are getting that documented in your kitchen. Recipe number or brand and product code. Document that paper trail. It's much easier to do it as you're going than have to go back and find it later. So again, keep track of those brands, those product codes. That documentation you should keep. Handy suggestion is to keep it in a notebook or a file so that you always have it, and make sure you update it as your brands change. Your grade group. Record the planned number of portions, serving sizes, and actual student servings for each grade group used in your schools. Adult and a la carte. Record the serving size, planned servings, and actual servings. Keep track of what you're spending and what you take in for your non-program foods. If you track this throughout the year, it's much easier than having to come up with it all at the end of the year. And then the quantity prep, number of servings, pounds, cans, indicate the amount of food prepared in terms of pounds or ounces, number 10 cans or servings. Again, your food buyer's guide will be helpful with that. And here on our example is where the quantity prep number of pounds will be listed, and then your a la carte and adult meals over here. A la carte, this a la carte would be referred to second meals, extra entrees, whatever you might be serving in the line. The leftover comments section. You're going to record the total amount of leftovers. For comments, record any changes or substitutions made in the menu and why. If something was shorted on the truck, you want to mention it here so that you know that was just a one-time thing. Include student comments about menu items and any special circumstances or situations. Some examples might include there was flooding and school had a late start, the rolls were shorted on an order, low attendance due to an unofficial senior skip day, or whatever the situation might be. Noting it's a biscuit and gravy day, which is a favorite breakfast, you'll keep that noted. You'll know that you always need to make extra for that particular day. And those go over here on the far side with your leftovers and comments are in the same section. The Excel production record for lunch and breakfast is located under the meal pattern information on the DESE website, and here is the web address. Our last trivia question: what president signed the first National School Lunch Act? And the answer is Mr. Harry S. Truman. Here are the references for some of the information used in this webinar today, if you'd like to get more information from them. Here's also some additional resources for you to use. USDA does have a complete set of recipes already done, and they're located here on the website so that you can get to those easily. I want to thank you very much for watching this webinar today. I hope it gave you a few tips or pointers along the way. And I'd love to hear from you. Let me know how it went. If there's other things that you have questions about, I can only make it better if I hear from you. So please send me comments or questions or anything else that I might be able to include on a future webinar. And I want to thank you very much and have a very blessed day.